VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today here on VCY America. My name is Jim Schneider, and I think you're going to find today's program to be very, very interesting as we talk about God's amazing designs. We're going to be taking a look at the scientific discoveries that are out there. You know, researchers have been making all these wonderful inventions, but where did they get the ideas from? We're going to be taking a look at how God's amazing designs have led many researchers and inventors to give us the kinds of items that we use every day, whether it be Velcro or flying on an airplane or many other things as well. It's our privilege to have with us on Crosstalk today Dr. DeYoung. He is the chairman of the Physical Science Department at Grace College in Winona Lake, Indiana. He's a graduate of Michigan Tech University with degrees, both bachelor's and master's in physics, Iowa State University receiving his Ph.D. in physics, and also Grace Seminary receiving his master's of divinity there. He's written 16 books on Bible science topics, including object lessons for children. He's a member of the Indiana Academy of Science and other organizations as well, but currently president of the Creation Research Society, 1,700 members worldwide. They do provide information through a technical quarterly journal, and he does speak on creation topics across the nation as well. Dr. DeYoung, we want to thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today.
Well, delighted to be here.
Doctor, there are so many times we look at an invention and we say, wow, that's really neat. Whoever thought of that had quite the intelligence, when in fact many times these inventions are actually looking to nature or creation for their ideas, something called biomimicry. Tell us about it.
Well, our position is that God has placed countless practical ideas in nature for us to discover and then come up with solutions to problems and new inventions and new devices. And most of these ideas have not been found, I'm sure. But it's kind of a delight to look in and see where inventors and engineers are looking these days. They're looking to nature for ideas where this design is already present.
Now, there will be those who will just say, well, this credit really belongs to millions of years of evolutionary change and not to creation. How do you respond to that?
Well, that is a very typical approach that objects have fine-tuned themselves over endless time, but that can be refuted. Many of the most interesting designs that we find are way back in the fossil record. These things have been here since the beginning. And also, many of these useful, practical designs that we find are from non-living objects, which don't mutate or evolve. Again, they've been around since the creation week.
We're speaking with Dr. Don DeYoung today, and I'd like to explore, because I believe your book is just one large object lesson, one after another, as it relates to pulling these items together and to look at nature, to look at these created beings, and also, as you mentioned, some non-living objects, and some of the wonderful inventions that we have as a result of them. And let's look at some of these here today. You go through multiple chapters, but one of those is your first chapter on microorganisms. And let's just point out a couple interesting things here, and something we use, it seems, on a daily basis, and more so, is the use of batteries. But they've got a connection to bacteria, don't they?
Well, they do. What we find, of course, is that many living things have electrical signals, just as we do in our own bodies. And it's realized that these tiny bacteria as well, if you string them together in series, you can come up with a biochemical battery. Now, it takes a lot of them because none of them have a lot of oomph, but when you put them together, and of course these are the kind of batteries that can repair themselves, they can put in isolated places, a whole new field of portable energy.
Oh, very interesting. Now, we also have heard the term nanotechnology. If you could tell us what is nanotechnology and how does this relate to a microorganism?
nanotechnology is a very exciting field today. As the word sounds, it's on a very small, microscopic level. And what's happening in the engineering world, we're learning how to build micro devices, whether they're mechanical pumps or valves or motors. In fact, the very kind of things that can be connected, let's say, with a medical drug and can be embedded in the body or move through the body, delivering useful medicines exactly where they're needed. Now, these kind of nanomotors, they're the size of a grain of dust, and yet they have their interior structure. What we discuss in the book, connecting that with objects called diatoms, which are small types of life. They're either a plant or an animal or something in between. And again, they're just that small. As we've studied these diatoms, we've realized that they have fascinating cases that they build around themselves out of silica. Under a microscope, some of these diatoms look like chandeliers. They look like strainers or sieves. They take many different forms. By the way, they live everywhere in the soil and in the water. Well, it's possible today to select particular diatoms that have an interesting shape and coat them with metal to make them more permanent. Then these things become components for motors, valves, pumps, these small modules on a nanoscale level. So these small creatures are helping us in this whole field of small-scale technology.
Very interesting. You have quite an extensive chapter on the insect world where you look at a number of insects to correlate how they have actually helped to teach inventors and to give ideas in different areas. What are a few of your favorites on the insect world and some of those items you developed there in your book?
Well, we do learn a lot from the insect world. One that comes to mind is what you'd call a water strider. We've probably all seen these shooting across a puddle or a pond, these insects that walk on the water. We've wondered how they can do that, how they keep from sinking. A close study of their legs shows that there are tiny hairs, in fact, smaller fibers on those yet. It just goes down and down, and that collects little tiny capsules of air that helps them to float. Well, as we've studied that and kind of pushed that ahead, the kind of technology that comes from that would be, for instance, small monitors that can scoot around on the surface of a pond to keep track of the quality of the water. Or you can take these fibers and embed them into fabrics for clothing or waterproof fabrics of various kinds. There are many spin-offs, many ideas that we can get from studying the lowly water strider.
Very interesting. Folks, we're talking about Dr. Donald DeYoung's book that he's co-authored with Derrik Hobbs entitled Discovery of Design, Searching Out the Creator's Secrets. And we're finding some of those secrets coming forth in items that we use today. A couple of these caught my attention here, and that is the chainsaw and its connection to the timber beetle larva.
That's really a curious one. Out in the Northwest long ago, a woodcutter was taking a rest. And then he watched these beetles that were working away on some wood that was already on the ground. And at that time, chainsaws were kind of in their infancy. They didn't know quite how to build them. And as he studied this beetle closely with a magnifying glass, he could kind of see the C-shaped pinchers or cutters that it was using, going right against the grain through hard wood. Well, what that has led to today is sort of the universal type chains that we use on a chainsaw, which, if you look at it closely, has a C-type cutter modeled after this beetle that, of course, long ago the Lord prepared to work in nature that way, and then we copy it and come up with a useful way to harvest and manage forests.
Very interesting. We are living in a day and age in which there is a lot of surveillance going on. We go down the highways and there's cameras. We are going into shopping malls, and it seems everywhere we're going today there's cameras or surveillance. And there is some connection there between surveillance and the honeybee.
Well, there certainly is. Again, the insect world helps us in a number of ways. Honeybees and dragonflies, as we study them and the amazing ways that they can fly upside down, backward, or hover in the air, far beyond anything that we've been able to construct. on that small scale already being built are surveillance-type craft that can monitor borders or towns or whatever. And furthermore, these insects, such as the honeybee, have very advanced optics. They have multiple lenses in their eye. They have the equivalent of fiber optics, just a very complex vision. And even that is being copied with, again, with nanoscale cameras, new devices based on lowly insects.
Well, you cover a number of insects in your books there, in your book, which is very interesting. By the way, folks, this book, Discovery of Design, is quite a tremendous work that's been put together. We're just taking a sample of some of the matters of creation and how they have been helpful, or the instrument to bring about some of the designs and useful materials that we have today that we utilize every single day. We are making this book available through Crosstalk, our way of saying thank you for your support of $16 or more. And you can obtain a copy of this book, and we'll continue to go through some of the aspects of it, but over 200 pages, and it's very pictorial. This is something you can sit down with your children. It's something that you as adults will enjoy looking at. Your teens will enjoy looking at it, but you'll see not only the product that we use today, but also to see the sea slug or the elephant nose fish with its electric sensor and other interesting creatures as well, and the things we've learned and the products we've developed as a result. So if you'd like to obtain a copy of the book, it's available by calling our switchboard at 800-729-9829. Again, it's our way of saying thank you for your support of $16 or more for Crosstalk. Dr. DeYoung, whenever we board an airplane, we can thank God for his creation as well. What have we learned from some various creatures as it relates to flight?
Well, again, in the insect chapter, ants even help us with understanding the structure and the management of our large air terminals. This gets rather complicated, but it's fascinating. The way ants work, the way their community goes together, and taking the least distance in their various paths and such. They're making mathematical models of the daily life of ants and applying that to, again, how to manage airports themselves, and that has become useful to us. There's other dimensions. If you've lived near an airport, you know that planes can be noisy, and in this day and age, we're trying to limit that kind of sound pollution. Well, it's realized that many flying creatures have accomplished a very quiet flight, such as owls. And as we study them, their feathers are extra soft, and they move their feathers for silent flight. And it's been realized that in some way we can interface that ability of owls with aircraft, especially when a plane is landing and lowers its gear, then the noise begins. And so there are experiments going on with taking around the wheels and the landing gear and not putting feathers on, but something equivalent to that lets the air slip around in a nice streamlined fashion. And this is already lessening the noise somewhat, and we'll learn more as time goes on.
My, very interesting. We're speaking today on Crosstalk with Dr. Don DeYoung, chairman of the Physical Science Department at Grace College, and we're learning about God's wonderful creation and certainly seeking out the Creator's secrets and how it's helping us in so many ways. We'll be back in just 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation seminar speaker with ICR.
Dr. Morris, how does our body react to invading cells?
Chris, cells that are different from our own are recognized as invaders, and our body's immune system quickly moves to destroy them. Consider now the fertilized embryo in the mother's womb. If it's really a foreign body, why doesn't the immune system destroy the fertilized egg? It turns out that there's a certain protein on the surface of the egg cell which thwarts the immune system's attack. A trigger in the womb causes this protein to be formed, and it has no other purpose. This is a wonderful sign of God's creative design. It's also a reminder that the embryo in the mother's womb is not a part of the mother to be disposed of as she chooses. The embryo is a unique individual in every way. Chris, the more we learn, the more we see the Back to Genesis idea supported.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more on Genesis, visit our website at icr.org. This is Chris O'Brien. Thanks for going back to Genesis.
folks, researchers are now taking their design elements from the natural world and creating extraordinary breakthroughs that benefit our health, our quality of life, our ability to communicate, and even help us work more efficiently. We're talking today with Dr. DeYoung. He is a co-author of the book Discovery of Design, Searching Out the Creator's Secrets, and looking, it is just page after page where you can learn about various creatures or elements of creation and look at some of the products that have come about as a result of it today. And I'm going to quickly have us move into the Chapter 4 area of the book dealing with underwater life. And there's a few of these that have our attention here today, Doctor. One of those is the boxfish. I'm not really familiar with what a boxfish is.
Well, there's a fascinating story with this. A while back, some car designers were working on streamlining cars to make them more efficient. And as part of that project, they went to a large aquarium facility to watch. They wanted to watch the sharks to see how they skim through the water, and maybe that would help them design parts of the car. Well, one of the fellows noticed that down in the corner of this large aquarium, there was this peculiar-looking fish. It's called the boxfish, and that's kind of what it looks like. Very awkward, and they were kind of laughing at that creature, how misformed it was. But then they looked at it more closely. And this box-type fish, very small, 6 to 10 inches in size, there was a current in this water, and it was moving around through the seaweed and the coral, and it did very well. It didn't bump into anything. Well, they went back to their laboratory and built a model of this fish, and then they put in what's called a wind tunnel with air streaming by it, or water. And they noticed that at the speed of the water and this fish, that it was designed. And the air and the water moved around the sides very nicely, and the creature, as they could see, could navigate very well. And so they kept working on this, and finally they took this design and have built it into a car. In fact, it's called a bionic Mercedes. It's a very compact car, and it has a blunt front end on it, like a box. It looks kind of strange, but as they found out, this small car gets 70 miles to gallon, and it's very efficient. And they learned this by looking at a fish that they were laughing at, but it turns out to be a fish with really advanced design.
So if we're passed by a vehicle and we start chuckling at its design, it may have a connection to something that they learned about how that's going to increase its gas mileage.
Exactly. Learning so many things from nature.
There's another interesting creation called the elephant nosefish. Tell us about it.
Well, that's a little creature that you'll see in some pet shops. It's freshwater, and some people keep it in their aquariums at home. And it does have a kind of a protruding nose on itself, so it's almost like an elephant's trunk. They've done studies of this elephant nosefish and come to realize that it has, this time, advanced electronics. And it's able to detect just parts per million or smaller of chemicals in the water. Kind of complex how they do this, but these studies go on. And they've been able to, dissect this fish and look in on it and see how it's operating, or else use the fish itself as a detector, as a probe for very small amounts of pollutants or chemicals in water. The fish has always done that, and then we learn from it how ourselves to manage and care for water.
There's another unusual item you have in your book here, and it is the lobster eye and its connection to the telescope lens.
Yes, from a lobster to space. Again, in this book, we always have two pictures, the object in nature, a lobster, and then what it ends up with, in this case, a space probe. A lobster lives in relatively shallow water where the light can filter down, so it has eyes to see. But a lobster's eyes are not like ours with a lens and a cornea. Instead, what they have is actually, if you can imagine it, a hollow box, like a long rectangle. And the insides of this box are silvered like a mirror. Well, light enters this square-type box and kind of bounces off the sides and finally ends up within the lobster where there are light detectors. It turns out that kind of reflection of light off the inside of a shiny box is just the kind of device that works for concentrating X-rays. Now, from space, from stars, there are many kinds of light. There's a visible light that we're familiar with, but there's also ultraviolet light and infrared and X-rays. Well, X-rays are hard to focus, but with this new device that's been built, actually a satellite with lobster eye type boxes on it, it collects X-rays coming in from far-off stars, and that way they can analyze it and learn a little bit more about what the stars are like. And we actually call it a lobster eye telescope. And these things are very useful. We've learned it from those creatures.
Is it true that NASA will actually study insects or different created beings for the purposes of designing their robotics and spacecraft and things like that?
That's a very active area of laboratory work, along with all of the high-tech business that goes on, again, studying God's creatures from nature. You mentioned robotics. That's an interesting one. You know, typically our space probes, if we go to the moon or go to Mars, they have wheels on these craft. Well, the problem is wheels can bog down in the dust and get stuck. In fact, right now on Mars, we have a probe called, they call it Spirit, and it's been stuck for over 6 months. As they try to rock it back and forth remotely, the wheels just go deeper and deeper. I think it's there to stay. Well, the thought is insects don't have wheels. They have legs. And so perhaps the next generation of space robotics that are going to land on other moons and planets should have legs that can move and walk over rocks, over sand, without getting stuck.
Very interesting. Chapter 5, you deal with a lot of land animals. Have we really learned something from a dog's paw?
Every one of these has a fascinating story, and yes, even a dog's paw has much to teach us. This actually goes back to the early 1900s. There was a sailor out on the East Coast. His name was Paul Sperry, and he liked to go sailing for recreation. And back then, a century ago, the deck of the small boat would get slippery, and a person could fall, and they just kind of put up with that. Well, one winter day, Paul was walking his dog down the sidewalk on land, and even though it was very slippery, he noticed that the dog was sure-footed. When they got back home, he looked at the dog's paw very closely and saw the zigzag nature on a paw of a dog. It's kind of a herringbone pattern. And he immediately got a piece of rubber material and carved a similar pattern in it and fastened it to his shoe. And he went outside and noticed that immediately that he had good traction. Well, from this inventor came up with the whole idea of shoes that have the kind of sole that we all have now with gym shoes or athletic shoes with various patterns and zigzag. And he got that idea originally from studying the paw of his dog, and in fact, he started a Sperry shoe company, which is still functioning, and they're still putting out those kind of shoes, as is the whole world.
And it goes back to 1935 and seeing the dog's paw.
Correct.
Wow. And then we talked about the lobster eye a little while ago, but there's also something about the penguin's eye that has been beneficial as well.
Every place we look, we find these ideas, and again, many more still waiting to be found. The experts got to wondering about these penguins that are down in Antarctica, standing in glaring ice and snow, where it's almost, you get snow blindness, it hurts. And they wondered how these penguins could adapt to that. Well, they looked closely inside the eye of a penguin and found out that there was an orange filter, kind of like a pigment. Actually, it was semi-liquid, and realized with more studies that orange, brownish-orange color worked very well to filter the sunlight to make it easier to look around, which they needed to do. Well, on that basis, then, manufacturers of sunglasses put together the kind that we see these days that have orange-tinted lenses. These are used in snow skiing, water skiing, or any kind of outdoor thing. They're very common now. And that idea was first brought forward by studying how the penguin's eye is designed.
And we can also help people who are suffering from cataracts and other eye disorders as well with that.
Exactly.
My, that's tremendous. Well, folks, we'd like to open our phone lines and have you speak with our guest here today, Dr. Donald DeYoung, author of Discovery of Design, Searching Out the Creator's Secrets. And again, I just want to make mention of the fact that the book, a very wonderful put-together book, and just really opens your eyes to how things like batteries, human organ repair, micro lenses, automotive engineering, paint, even credit card security all have their links to natural designs. And if you'd like to get a copy of this book, it's available through Crosstalk. Again, our way of saying thank you for your support of $16 or more. You can obtain it by calling our switchboard at 800-729-9829. That's 800-729-9829. And one of the things that's very helpful with your book, Doctor, is the fact that this is an excellent educational piece, because there are study questions for each of the chapters and about each of the items and how it relates to the discovery or invention of something. But a wonderful tool for homeschooling families or those who want to enhance their education, whether it be private or public education. Just a helpful tool for learning, isn't it?
Well, it is. Jim, there's a common assumption that science has to be complicated, long words, and difficult to understand. And Derrik Hobbs and I, the authors, we want to go the other direction. We believe that creation and these kind of details are for Christians to enjoy most of all, because we know who put it all together. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's wonderful design for all ages.
If you'd like to speak with our guest today, our phone number to Crosstalk is 800-733-9829. That's 1-800-733-9829. We welcome you to get on board with us here today. Doctor, the human body is also a marvel, isn't it?
Well, it is, and even there we are finding many wonderful ideas on and new devices and new plans. There's a great story, again, that goes back a century ago. There was going to be a World's Fair planned in Paris, and there was a competition for building structures for the buildings for this fair. And the different architects kind of were coming up with their ideas. One fella had a friend who was in anatomy in the body, and was showing him the largest bone in our body, which is the femur down there going into the hip. And that's an interesting bone because it's got a ball and socket at the top where it fits into your hip, and the ball is kind of off-centered. It's off to the side, which at first looks like kind of an unusual design, but it's very strong, and it works very well for the kind of motion that we have. Well, this architect took that femur and did the mathematics of how it's curved at the top, and then he turned it over 180 degrees so that the curve was at the bottom, and on that basis he built a structure. By the way, his name was George Eiffel. And so his structure was the Eiffel Tower, which has the graceful curves on the bottom of the four large legs. And his architect competitors, they laughed at his design. They said it didn't look very good, that it would collapse under its own weight. Well, here we are a century later. All the other buildings are gone. The Eiffel Tower still stands as a famous landmark for Paris. And it's every time you see that, it's going back to the design of our hip bone.
Very interesting, and I'm looking, folks, in the book. There is a picture of the femur, and there is a picture of the Eiffel Tower, and some things we can learn from it as well. Our phone number here to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. The publisher sent me a few copies of these to give away, so I'd like to do that to some of you who are calling in today. Have some open lines here, 800-733-9829. Pick up your phone, give us a call right now to Crosstalk.
Are you on death row? One Christian film producer says everybody is. Every one of us will one day die. Then what? In a heart-stirring 30-minute DVD, film writer, producer, and director Dave Cristiano has released a penetrating on-stage drama that takes you inside a prison cell and captures the life of a man on death row who knows that in less than 3 hours he will die. Convicted of murder, he sits angry, guilty, and scared. At his request for a preacher, the two engage in a soul-searching conversation that is forever impacting. As an evangelistic tool, VCY America is making available Death Row, encouraging you to share with unsaved friends and loved ones. One copy is available for a donation of $8, or you can obtain a 4-pack of the Death Row DVDs for a donation of $20. This offer will expire at the end of March. To make your donation by phone, call 1-800-729-9829 and specify whether you want 1 or 4 Death Row DVDs. That's 1-800-729-9829.
Discovery of Design, searching out the creator's secrets. Folks, this is just a fantastic journey into the intersection of science and God's blueprints for life, discovering answers to some of the most intricate challenges we face. And it's all contained here in this book. And Doctor, you're looking for more ideas even for the next volume of this book. Is that correct?
Well, we are, and we've started a website, discoveryofdesign.com, where we're collecting ideas. We see it as a whole new exciting direction for science, searching out the secrets of the Creator.
Okay. Well, folks, check out that site, discoveryofdesign.com. Well, let's get to the phone lines. We have Jim calling from Pensacola, Florida. Jim, you're on the air.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm enjoying the show. I have a question that's always kind of perplexed me. It's pretty clear to even the most casual observer that the complexity of creation to have happened by random chance is a statistical impossibility. So how has theories contrary to that gained so much momentum in society?
Well, it's a good question you ask. It seems like the evolutionary worldview it dominates today. Somewhere in the past, actually, over a century ago, I think science went off on a tangent and was redefined that it had to be naturalism alone. The supernatural became superstition. Now, that's kind of the way that science operates today. I don't think that's the true definition. Science is a search for truth, and if it leads to the Creator, which it does, so be it. Science has rather impoverished itself, that it's just limited to naturalism. And so no matter how small the probability, the chances are of life and its development, the supporters will say, get past it, live with it, it happened. They're just kind of limited by this worldview, and it's unfortunate. I find encouragement by thinking of the days in the past, the pioneers of science from days gone by. Most of those men and women were very godly. Again, science has kind of limited itself today.
Jim, we appreciate your call, and if you'll put you on hold, you're our first caller today, and we'll send you a complimentary copy of this book, Discovery of Design. Okay, hold the line, please. And we'll get that information from you. Let's see. Elaine in Oconomowoc, you're on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to say I have the book, and I love it, and I want to get another one.
Okay. And tell us how has the book impacted you? What do you like about the book?
Well, he's just got such fascinating facts, and then he's got these questions at the end to make you think, and of course it gives you the answers if you can't get the answers by yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to, you could go and look up the answers. And then it fascinated me that he even wanted more input to make another book. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, last winter it was really cold, and I have a bird feeder outside my kitchen window, and I was watching a cardinal eat a seed, and I could see little puffs of, breath come out of his mouth. I thought that was so cute. And I don't know if that has any scientific, significance. And then we have a horse, and it's always out in all kinds of weather. And, in the winter, the fur grows, but, what happens with his eyes? How can his eyes not freeze in this weather? Things like that fascinate me.
That's an interesting thing. What about those eyes not freezing, Doctor?
Well, thanks for the encouragement, Elaine. You know more about horses than I do, I think. But, yes, every example you bring up would be another direction to explore. It's rather exciting to think that the Creator has given us all kinds of useful ideas and object lessons if you got the eyes to see them.
Yes, praise God.
Well, thank you, Elaine, and we want you to get on that site there, too, Discovery of Design. Maybe you can submit that idea of the eyes.
Sure.
Okay? And we'll have you hold the line, and we'll send you a copy as well, okay?
Wonderful.
Okay, hold the line, please, and we'll pick up that call. Our telephone number here to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829, and taking your calls and questions today. Have there been inventions or products that we've seen come about through vegetation, Doctor?
Well, many examples in the world of vegetation. Of course, first of all, many of our useful medicines and drugs, actually over half of them come from chemicals that we find in the plant world. That's one reason for good stewardship of the remaining forest and plants we have on Earth, because we have that great reservoir of ideas to explore. A good practical example when it comes to vegetation is the beech tree. Now, in the springtime, at least up here in the cold Midwest, when that tree buds out, the whole leaf is carefully folded up inside the bud, and then it snaps open, and the whole leaf immediately unfolds. Well, we studied that closely to see that the leaf has sort of an accordion structure, and you've seen that before as well, the listeners, in the vein of a leaf. Mm-hmm. Now, that idea can be useful, and one area where that's been applied is, once again, to space. We have solar panels, solar collectors. They have to have quite a good area to collect sunlight energy to operate satellites. But you got to get them up to space, either in a rocket or in the space shuttle. They need to be folded up. Well, one way to do that is to fold the solar panel similar to the beech leaf, get it up into space, and then it springs open and unfolds. And this folding mechanism of a leaf has actually been used for more than one space probe, learning that high-tech business by looking at leaves.
Very interesting. Let's go next to Mansfield, Pennsylvania. And John, you're on the air. Thanks for calling us.
Good afternoon. Well, my name is John. I live up here in northern Pennsylvania, which is called the Grand Canyon of Pennsylvania, and I teach insects and everything to animals and animal behavior to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I've been doing this for over 40 years. I'm 85 years old now, but I have a comment. I wish maybe you could say something about it. One of the most amazing birds in the world was right here when the Pilgrims set foot in America. It's called a quail. This quail and the turkey was here when we came. This little bird spends its whole night on the ground. It does not roost in the trees. It forms a circle, and it puts all their tails in the circle, and they face in every single direction, and they put all their young, their cripples, and everything in the middle. This way, any predator that comes near it, they can take off in any direction. Do you think it's possible that when our forefathers went west from the east here by covered wagon, and they were attacked by the Indians, and they formed this wagon circle, and they put all their horses and livestock and women and children in the middle, do you think they might have picked this up from this little bird?
Well, that's a good one, John, and I appreciate your work with kids. So valuable. I'm not familiar with the quail and that kind of story of how they protect themselves and their young. That's a good one to research. Whether that idea caught the eye of pioneers with the wagon trains, it certainly does sound familiar, and there are ways to research and get, whether there is a good connection there. That's certainly one to look at. It's a good story.
Well, John, I appreciate that, and we would, suggest you get to that site and put that down for a suggestion for research, but we've got one copy left of this book, and because you teach children, I think it might be helpful for you to have a copy of this book as well, John.
Well, thank you so much.
So we'll put you on hold, and we'll get our final giveaway copy from the publisher to you here today, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much for your call. Just hold the line, please. And our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Calling next from Fort Scott, Kansas. Gary, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. I've always been interested in waterfowl, ducks and geese that fly north and south, and how their navigational system works, and did our military and airplanes, did they ever, use that as an example of how they developed their navigational systems? I mean, I can't even find my car when I come out of Walmart in the parking lot. And it just amazes me how they can fly through storms and bad weather and stuff, and they still, every year, they get where they're going.
Well, we can certainly all relate to parking lots as you describe. Certainly, many examples of flight have been used in technology. During World War II, the bat was studied as a beginning for radar and how they operate, and of course, that's so important to us today. Some of the military planes that have swept-back wings, and even wings that can change their angle slightly, that's been based on studying the Swift a bird that can fly at high speed and likewise change the angle of its wings. So that whole area goes on. The whole world of flight is so amazing, and it's so far beyond anything we've been able to do with our man-made structures, and we're still learning.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate the call. Number 800-733-9829 to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Tracy, you're on the air.
Hi, I was just listening to your program, and I had just heard the thing that you were talking about with the Eiffel Tower and the gentleman who designed that, relating that to the hip bone legs. And I was wondering if you could recommend, I have a 4-year-old, and we are homeschooling him, and he is real fascinated in stuff like this, and we already get curriculum for things like this through Answers in Genesis, but can you recommend any other good places to get homeschool type material for a child his age?
Well, a good question. Answers in Genesis is certainly a valuable site with a question-answer area and all that. Of course, they have an Answers magazine, and in fact, every magazine has a section with this very topic we're describing of designs in nature.
I believe this book also, your book that you've co-authored with Derrik Hobbs, really could be used. Some things may be above the level of a 4-year-old, but there are other things that mom or dad can bring down to that level that would be very beneficial.
Well, there are. In fact, when we wrote this book, we laughed that we wanted it to be for ages 5 to 95, again, for a family audience.
Right. And again, folks, the copy of Discovery of Design is available through Crosstalk, our way of saying thank you for your support of $16 or more. And the book that includes postage coming to you. You can obtain it by calling our switchboard at 800-729-9829 and ask for the book Discovery of Design, or by writing to Crosstalk, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Okay, well, let's go to holding the longest, Silver Bay, Minnesota. And Adam, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you. One thing I wanted to share along the lines of creation and what we can learn from it. I've worked in a couple different children's ministries, and every now and then I teach Sunday school at our church. And you can get so many different object lessons if you will take time to study creation, for Bible stories, and children learn so easily and are always amazed by that. I've also been able to share it with children that don't go to church, and they go, "Really? Is it really like that?" And the science part of it always blows their mind.
Very interesting. Thank you, Adam. I know that you would concur with that, Dr. DeYoung, because you've written about using these as illustrations for children.
Well, that's one of our goals, and it doesn't take a lot. Just things from the kitchen or from the yard to work with kids.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in 60 seconds. Dr. DeYoung is our guest today, co-author of Discovery of Design. Taking your calls here today at Crosstalk at 800-733-9829. Stay with us. We'll be back for the final segment and more of your calls here at Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. In August of 2010, Glenn Beck held his Restoring Honor Rally in Washington, D.C. that included the unveiling of the Black Robe Regiment, a group of clergy from all religions, including imams, according to FoxNews.com. In the summer of 2011, it was his Restoring Courage Rally in Israel that also had an ecumenical flair, I believe. And in the summer of 2012, it will be his next rally, Restoring Love. Will this Restoring Love rally be about embracing ecumenicalism and the social gospel? Will Restoring Love mean we are to set aside theological and doctrinal issues in order to win the culture war? I believe more and more Christians who refuse to compromise on what it means to be a Christian, who refuse to compromise on the gospel, who defend theological lines, are indeed going to be called unloving. But indeed, that's the most loving thing we can do.
There is so much in this book, Discovery of Design, that we haven't even scratched the surface of the many, many creator secrets that are coming from his creation and the things that we have developed and learned. Things like insect repellent and the anti-gravity spacesuits, learning from the giraffe, adhesive from the gecko, submarines from the whales, chemicals from the sea slugs, shock absorbers from the toucan beak of the toucan, and more and more and more illustrations that are contained in this book. Be ready to jot down that phone number at the close of the program. We'll tell you how you can obtain a copy through Crosstalk here as we're speaking today with Dr. Don DeYoung. And right back to the phone lines, we have in Danville, Kentucky, Judy is calling in. Hi, Judy, you're on the air.
Hello. Listening to the program today, and I was blown away. It's so amazing.
Yes, go ahead, Judy.
And my grandson is getting ready to start studying evolution in school, and he does not want to. Mm-hmm. But he's in public school, so it's a mandatory thing. And he's dead set against it, so I told him, I said, I'll get a book for you, Cody, and that way you can show them at school that, God did all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, appreciate that, Judy. Let me make a suggestion to a student in a situation like that. Two things. First of all, I would encourage him to not be difficult. Don't give a teacher a hard time. Don't stomp out of the class. Even if a teacher is teaching evolution, they deserve some respect. Don't be difficult. And the second part would be for the student to do his best. If they're working on evolution, let them learn it. In fact, learn it better than the rest of them. The closer you look at it, the more weaknesses you see, as long as you're also grounded in biblical ideas. Maybe there's an opportunity to write a paper or give a speech. There's got to be a way to reach out to teachers who don't understand. In other words, to build bridges instead of walls.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate that call. Janet in La Crosse, Wisconsin, you're on the air.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
I was calling today because I myself love to watch all the insects, and you can learn a lot by just observing these. And my kids and husband and a few other people, they think I'm crazy every time I sit there and I get a magnifying glass and just look down at them. But I just find that fascinating, and I think your book sounds wonderful.
Well, thank you, Janet. Yes, even the insect world has much to teach us.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Janet, for your call here today as well to Crosstalk. And so often, Doctor, we can even go to Scripture where it says, look to the ant or go to the ant or use many animals. The sparrows going through the sky. We can learn from God's creation.
Well, the Lord used these kind of object lessons in His daily life, and they surround us, and good for all ages to learn from.
Next to Brule, Wisconsin, David, you're on the air.
Hello, thanks for taking the call. Living in northern Wisconsin, we're conscious of cold weather, and decades ago, my brother and I were asking questions about deer, and hoofed animals like deer walking in the cold snow. How do they keep their feet warm? I know, the design of certain military boots called the bunny boots was developed for the Korean War, based somewhat on what I suppose rabbits wrap their feet in. But what do deer keep their feet warm with? That's been a question. Do you have anything like that in your book?
Not in this particular book. I appreciate the idea, and there's another project to work on. I would assume that the deer limits the circulation in their feet when it gets cold, so there's no harm and they can get around. I know some animals that kind of hibernate in the winter and stop moving. They actually produce a type of antifreeze equivalent in their blood to keep from freezing. So maybe the deer even do something beyond that. But that's a good question. The cold does not seem to bother these animals. In fact, they seem to be delighted with a snowfall.
Now, although you don't deal with the hoofs, you do deal with the antlers in your book.
Well, we have the idea that deers produce new antlers every year. It's a fast-growing part of their body. and the chemistry of that is being studied in an attempt to be able to, let's say, regrow a lost finger for a person. We just don't have that ability, but there might be ways to turn on the chemicals to the genes that we have in our body to in some way copy the way that these animals can rebuild parts of their body.
Appreciate that call. We're going to squeeze one last call in from Salina, Kansas, and this is Kent. You're on the air.
I feed the rabbits, squirrels, and birds in our backyard, but I've noticed that the turtle doves drink kind of like dogs do, which is different than all the other birds when they dip, and then raise their head and all that. But the turtle doves don't do that. And I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of like evolution maybe. The turtle dove is more advanced than the other birds.
Very interesting, Kent. The fact that, there's no two types of animals that are exactly alike. There's just infinite variety there. It just kind of shows you what an artist God is as he put these things into place.
Thank you, Kent, for your call here today, and to all of you participating in the broadcast. And our thanks to the publisher who provided us those few copies for giveaway purposes as well. Doctor, we've really just scratched the surface on this issue. You have so much more in your book, but what can we conclude from all of this?
I would conclude that nature is not by chance or accident, that there's planning and purpose to it all. And actually, as the book of Romans says, there's no excuse for missing out on this clear evidence for the Lord. His fingerprint is everywhere. And so it's a challenge to the world, and for the believer, I think it's a great encouragement.
The book is entitled Discovery of Design, Searching Out the Creator's Secrets. We're making it available through Crosstalk. Again, our way of saying thank you for your support of $16 or more. If you'd like to obtain a copy, just contact us at 1-800-729-9829. That's 800-729-9829, or by writing to Crosstalk, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Well, Dr. DeYoung, we appreciate your time this afternoon, and thanks for putting this information together with Derrik Hobbs, a very enlightening and informative book.
Well, thank you for the visit, Jim.
And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk. As Scripture says, remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. We have a Creator God. Trust Him. Believe His Word. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a cassette or CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.